Persephone Jackson sat on a wooden folding chair in the sparsely decorated room provided backstage, along with three other comics. They were all casually awaiting their turns for the Monday night amateur show at the Comedy Palace in Royal Oak, Michigan. Persephone wore a skin tight black leather miniskirt with a purple silk blouse, all covered up by her black leather trench coat, which she had belted securely before she sat down in the chair furthest from the door. The only thing exposed other than her head and hands were her big legs, upon which she wore black fishnet hose and black patent leather pumps with high stiletto heels. There were two white guys that strolled in seconds behind the other, and they automatically struck up a conversation with each other. They were seated near the door. The so called brother, who introduced himself as Jeff, sat down uninvited next to Persephone and hadn't stopped babbling to her since being seated. The only break in his chatter was his annoying voice and that laugh. "Po, Jeff," Persephone thought, but she kept that to herself as she pondered what his routine would be like. Jeff appeared to Persephone to be a member of the unfortunate strand of African Americans who had the complexion of the meat of an overripe banana and were maybe one or two chromosomes away from being a full blown albino. He seemed to Persephone's quick but usually accurate scrutiny to be no more than 35 years of age, but he must have concentrated very hard on the shape his body was in, Persephone thought, in order for such a young man to have visible titties which strained against his too tight, once black, now gray, sharp 2 years ago jogging suit, that he must have neglected his body for a prolonged period of time. As he kept up his nervous chatter, Persephone took closer notice of Jeff's hair. It looked as though someone had glued tiny black BBs where his follicles should have been. When Jeff dropped his head once, laughing at one of his many utterances, Persephone noticed the hairline on the back of his head, and right above his collar had sparse hair growth, and some type of razor rash was festering. Persephone almost cringed. He would have he would have to plop his big dumb ass down right next to me, Persephone fumed to herself, but tried to remain cool. Persephone had prepared herself for this evening. She thought she had never considered having Po Jeff in the mix. She found it increasingly hard to tune him out and to concentrate on what she had come for. Persephone grew weary of nodding her head and giving the occasional uh-huh to Jeff, and thought she'd take a sip from the Avion water in the small plastic bottle she'd planned ahead of time to have with her for this night. She removed the bottle from her purse along with the wrapped straw she'd borrowed from Moy's Chinese restaurant with the faded logo of the restaurant printed on the tissue fine perforated paper that kept the straw sanitary. She held the straw up and blew through the tube just to clear any lint or debris that might have found its way in there. "Hey, you're not going to do coke or anything, are you?" Jeff queried, and pointing an accusing finger at the drinking straw Persephone held in her left hand. "Ha ha!" Only Jeff seemed to find this comment hilarious. Persephone held the bottle up to Jeff as if making a toast, then waved the straw around like a magician and looked at Jeff with a nod of her head and raised eyebrows. "Great, yeah, I am thirsty," he said, and grabbed eagerly for the Avion. "Fool, don't even try it," Persephone blurted out before she could even think about how loud she must have been. She noticed the two white guys had ceased conversations and both had snatched their heads in Persephone and Jeff's direction, but they remained seated. "Hey, nobody shoot, okay, dudes?" one of them said, And Persephone didn't see a damn thing funny. Just chill, white boy. Ain't nobody packing, all right? Persephone shot back, not as loud as her previous outbursts, but with the necessary bass in her voice. He's only joshing, Jeff said, trying to slip the other two men a wink that said, hey, I can handle this, you guys. I know these people. Oh, so now I'm the enemy because of a bottle of water? Persephone tried to make light of the situation with sarcasm. She found herself developing a deep loathing for this man named Jeff. She thought she could cool things down a bit by just keeping silent. Over the years, and on more than one occasion, people, friends, and a few brave strangers have brought it to Persephone's attention that she talked too loud. It had been a little less than 7 years ago at a Prince concert when two security guards approached her and said that people were complaining. They asked if she could please keep it down. The people in her section applauded the guards as they turned to leave, a stunned and embarrassed Persephone. She could get as loud as a damn cow, as her mother would often remind her. My name's Patrick, and sitting over there, that's Mark. One of the white guys that had been observing the exchange silently had stood up and come over to where Persephone was seated. Patrick extended his hand and gestured a handshake. Persephone glanced over at Mark, and he was looking at Patrick as if Patrick had just walked on water. Jeff mistook Persephone's hesitation as rejection and jumped up from his seat, eagerly grasping Patrick's extended hand and shaking it vigorously with an uncontained grin on his face. Patrick looked as though he gave Jeff's wrist a firm grip and released his hand from Jeff's. Ladies first, man, Patrick said sternly but calmly, and turned again to Persephone, extending his hand once again. Oh, sure, guy. But, I was thinking that women's lib stuff and all, most women will slap your face if you don't treat them like one of the fellas, Jeff babbled. Just give me time, fat boy, Persephone thought to herself as she rolled her eyes at Jeff. Jeff flopped his hefty weight back down on the wooden chair he'd been seated in, and nearly toppled over onto the dirty linoleum floor. He then bucked his eyes with his arm extended in front of him and fingers splayed in a clumsy but successful attempt to regaining his balance. After he was sure he wouldn't topple over to the floor, he responded with, You gonna leave me hanging? Patrick said, and tipped his head toward his extended hand in an attempt to divert Persephone's attention from Jeff. Persephone gathered a degree of composure and extended her right hand. And that, ladies and gentlemen, are the first few pages of Big Sister Almighty. I hope you stick around, or stay tuned, or at least follow me so that you can be abreast on when I put out a live, because I want to do a live soon. So yeah, hang with me, baby. Big Sister Almighty. Let's do this trip.